most, or maybe all of our listeners are under 35, maybe under 40. So at what point did you know in your relationship, whether it was dating or when you were engaged, did you know that you would be in a full-time vocational ministry calling for your lives? And how did you talk about it? Did you just know that you knew, and how did you process that? And the part B of that question is, that's
this is
part
a
A.
loaded question.
It's a loaded question, but how important is it to navigate that while you're dating to make sure your callings align for the rest of your life? Whether you're going to be a lawyer and a doctor or pastors, how did you navigate all of that? I know it's a loaded question, but
partly I was done with my education when I met him,
which was music
ed,
degree.
Vocal choral. So I already knew who I was in career-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he began to talk about wanting to be a pastor, I just said, great.
You saw what you were doing could fit with that.
I grew to see that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know
or
if I saw it at
you would be
first.
a teacher and he would be a pastor.
I didn't exactly think of, but as far as us being together and him being a pastor, to me there was never a doubt, never a question. But I do think that if you're called to ministry, it's crucial before you get married that you're, and I had it written down here, have your, be of one mind, be like-minded, where Paul says in Philippians 2, make my joy complete by doing 4 things. And I added to that, before you marry, do 4 things. Be like-minded, have the same love, be one in spirit and one in mind. And we when we got together and started to date and talk, we were just on the same page. Now, I'm a little older than him. Everybody knows that. 2.5 years. I'm a little bit older than him. I finished my degree earlier. I already had a job. Mm-hmm. I was out in the world working.
Yeah.
He still didn't know yet. He was not yet full-time. So in the world's eyes, we looked a little bit unequal. We looked unequal because one of us was already in the career and the other one was not. And we looked unequal. However, in the spirit, we were like this. Yeah. Right? We just connected in the spirit.
So what happened for me was growing up in a home where parents asked you the summer you graduated, what were you going to do with your life? That's what I got. So I said, I'm going to be a shop teacher. And I'm literally going to go to SUNY. I couldn't look at my family for guidance. So when I met Priscilla, then I met her mother and her father. And they were successful business people. They were people of stature and people of influence. I realized if I want to marry her, I cannot be. And actually, I could have stayed in electrician business. The union was starting to, this grunt job I had that was just paying the bills. When I met Priscilla, I thought, she's teaching, she's getting her master's. What am I going to do? And she was asking me, what do you want to do with your life? And I'm thinking, could be an electrician. And we did something that I don't know if she remembers, but I drove by the apartment building in Penfield, New York, and I just saw it again, that when we were dating, we would come over for dinner. This is I don't know if I recommend this, but this is what we did. That first church scared the fear of God in us about blowing it physically.
Purity. Staying pure.
Purity.
We were not going to do anything physically, sexually before marriage. Mm-hmm. And so that means you can't be engaged for 18 years. But also, I wanted to know what God's will was. So we literally ate together, and this is crazy, but I went in another room in her apartment and prayed and studied. And I kept coming up most nights. I kept coming up with, you're going to be a pastor. And I said, I already tried that. I'm not going to be a pastor.
Because of the Bible school experience.
Yeah, the whole thing with, I wasn't like pastor of my first church. Yeah. And I felt like I had failed. And I felt like, what am I? But I kept coming back. What are your gifts? I would look at the gifts and I'd go through the 4 basic passages, 1 Corinthians 12, Romans 12, Ephesians 4, 1 Peter 4. And I'd go through them. I'd pray about them and say, man, I want to be a pastor. I just think I love people and I want to preach. If I could do that for my life. So I told her that and she goes, well, that's interesting. And I said, yeah, but we said maybe we should do this. And then one weekend we went down to her mother's and I was like, okay, I need to go if I'm not going to be an electrician, I need an education. And I said, Mrs. Hall, I'm looking at either Philadelphia College of the Bible or Wheaton. And Wheaton, I got to tell you, is summa cum laude. It's like way over me. And it's, all these guys are senators' kids and all that kind of stuff. And Philadelphia College Bible, we could live here in your house and, be close. And she goes, let me see these overnight. She comes back the next morning. She goes, go for Wheaton. I said, Mrs. Hall, you gotta understand, I can't even pick the sand off their shoes. I majored in smoking lounge. You know what I mean? In high school. I don't know what grades I have. And she said, well, you don't know if you don't try. And I went to Buffalo for the trials for Wheaton's interviews, and the girl looked at me. She said, so these are your grades? It was almost funny. She goes, wait a minute, these are your grades? I said, yes, but you have high SATs. She goes, I get it. So were you not in a born-again home? I go, no. Totally never did homework, never did anything. She goes, so we have latent ability. She says, bad grades. She goes, and what are you doing here? And she said to Priscilla. And Priscilla said,
we're engaged.
I get to be there.
And she goes, well, wait a minute, what's the deal? You want to be a pastor? I said, yes. She goes, I'm going to do something that I don't want you to tell none of the valedictorians in the hallway waiting to come in. Don't say this. Yeah, I'm taking all your credits, basket weaving, underwater polo, everything you did in community college in Rochester, everything in State University of New York, Bible school, everything. You're going to come in as, we have kids that leave. We want to take you in. You want to be a pastor. We want to make it happen.
Wow. As a junior.
And I went in.
You went in as a junior?
As a
Yeah,
junior.
She took everything.
Wow.
And I got a job out there, Medina Middle School. I taught school.
Okay.
And the pastor that married us said, now Priscilla and Scott in premarital, he said, I want to tell you something, Priscilla. Both of you are working. Only one of you is making a paycheck. Remember that.
Amen.
You're not
Say it
supporting
again.
Scott.
Say it again.
Only one of you is getting a paycheck, but you're both working, and I want you to remember that.
And so he told me also not to be lazy, because I did see this in seminary. Guys that would shoot hoops, guys that would lift weights while their wives are working. Don't make it harder if you're going to, and the Lord told me to always get part-time jobs. I sold, I was doing sporting goods. I just did a house painting. I wanted her to see that I wasn't a deadbeat. I wasn't using,
Just a student.
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Right.
And then the pastor also told me in premarital, he said, now you come from divorce? I said, yeah, it was horrible. He said, don't use the D word. And I thought he was right on, because in fights, I would almost say it. We're going to divorce.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to divorce. And it was almost like saying it like, what are you going to do? Are you going to run like my father? Like,
Wow.
Interesting.
and when I said it a couple times, and then I just felt one time like, you're not going to divorce. You're done with this. You beat this.
And I just sat there. I said, well, I'm not going anywhere. If you want to go, you can go, but I'm not going anywhere. And, I had to see,
That's
my
funny. Knowing you both
parents-
like I do, I can see that.
My
Yep.
parents had
exactly.
a lifelong marriage. What can I say?
Yeah.
And his parents didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just, I wasn't going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So
You were fighting against a generational thing.
Yeah.
I believe that. I was
Yeah.
just thinking that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And somebody has to step up in a generational line and say, nope.
It
enough's
ends
enough,
here.
It stops here.
Yeah.
And see, we always joke about what Ruth Bell Graham said. You've heard this? Have you heard this? She said, Billy and I did not believe in divorce, but murder was always an option. And I love that. And we, when you're younger and you're fighting, you don't joke about it. But now that we're older, I just think it's funny. Murder was always an option, but we didn't take that option, but it was an option. So
I think those early 20s were our hardest. That was the inner healing days, getting delivered, getting ministry. We did
While you
it's
were
how-
married, right?
While we're
Yeah.
married and
Yeah.
having children and ministry.
So a little
And
different
old
for us,
people.
like I said.
yeah,
The Lord graciously had us deal with a lot of that before.
Yeah.
yeah,
So we didn't
Yeah.
have to
that's
Mhm.
good.
start our
Now
marriage.
we have to deal with other stuff in our marriage. There's always
Yes.
That thing with the murder thing.
Yeah.
I think we're ready to graduate to that, actually.
You know what I've said? Sometimes when we have a disagreement, and he feels one way and I feel the other way, and sometimes I'll say, God didn't bring us together to be identical, because if we were identical, then one of us is unnecessary.
Mm.
So
Wow.
That's good.
one of us is unnecessary if we're supposed to think alike, talk alike, that's not, God brings two people together who are different, makes them one, but, the coming together of the different is, there's
Makes them
some
more
turbulence there.
compatible.
I want to back up to unequal yoking,
Yeah.
in dating and all that kind of stuff. I just said this joke again. It's true, but my church, that fundamental church, tried to hook me up with a pretty redhead Campus Crusade girl, and it was the worst date I'd ever had. And I remember they so thought it would be just a thing because they thought, oh, this guy's going to be a pastor someday, and I was saying, no, I'm not. And then I did, and I gave up dating. You know, I didn't kiss it goodbye because I didn't believe in it. I just was like, you know what, I'm done.
I did too.
She also died to it, and when we weren't looking for them, and just kind of focusing on the Lord and doing our job, God brought it in. It's like a Matthew 6:33. When you seek first God.
Yeah.
So the people that feel like they got to do the dating and all that kind of stuff, all I can say is we both burned through that and said, you know what, we're just not going to go that way. And I don't know, we were so blessed. And I think the key was when we saw each other talking and loving, being together and just talking and deep stuff, not just stupid stuff, but like, you know, I mean, we would do some fun stuff too, but we were talking Bible, we were talking church, we were talking the Lord. And I think when I saw that, I thought, wow, she really is equally yoked with me. We can work the field together. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I have colleagues whose wives don't even attend their church.
Right.
It's their ministry, and they don't like people. They don't like church. I saw her direct plays for the high schools, you know, with 50 kids, and then parents coming twice on a weekend to watch their kid in Bye Bye Birdie or, you know, The Music Man, and Priscilla's up there doing this. And I go, wow, she can actually stand in public. She's not, you know, she's got the skills. I wasn't looking at like you're filling a resume, but I just thought we kind of fell into it. I just thought I loved her. Thought I was gaga. I thought, oh my gosh. So, you know, I remember a friend of mine at work actually said something critical about Priscilla. I almost put him through another life. I rearranged his life, and I was gone. But at the same time, I look back and I go, wow, God blessed us in that we were on the same spirit. I think the spiritual, I mean, we loved each other physically. We saw, you know, we weren't not attracted, but I think the key for us was the spiritual unity. We loved God. And that got us through all that junk of, you know, me waking up and going, man, I was dysfunctionally raised, you know, and realizing, wow, we don't really have fathers. And I think that's a need. That's why I want to help people with that. And anyway, going through all that.
That's good.
That was going to be my question.
I was going to say, what was your question?
Yeah, that was going to be my question. It's just like, and I want to target it towards mom to mom, minister to minister. I want to target it to you.
Here we go. Loaded questions.
But like, no, what were some of the things, because ministry can get so much, like, so like consuming. Children can be so consuming. If you're going through a time of inner healing, that can be so consuming. So what was it that kept you connected to your husband in the midst of you guys starting this church, like you being a mom, all these things are happening? Like, was it the communication? Was it like taking like specific times, or was it just the grace of God that you knew it was the season you were in? Like,
you know, actually, from day one, we declared Monday was day off. And
really?
That's pretty mature for us being so young.
That's unbelievable.
Mature.
I wish we could say
We
that.
just,
I had those in my notes. I actually
we
thought about that.
decided
That's amazing.
Monday was our day off.
You had a Sabbath.
You took a Shabbat. Yeah.
Yeah. And then as we, you know, as our kids came, it was Monday. And then night times, you know, he would have meetings. But I gave up full-time teaching. Oh, I know. You know, when the pulpit committee said, so Priscilla, are you going to get a job here teaching music now that your husband's going to be the pastor? And I said, no, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
So I made a decision then, after 7 years of full-time teaching, that I was going to stay home with my kids. So that's one thing. So therefore, I'm always around. And the church, by the way, was 20 feet away from the parsonage.
Yeah.
So we were together a lot. But then as my kids got a little bit older, God started to tap my heart about homeschooling, which is not something I ever intended to do, ever wanted to do, fought against it.
Yeah.
But as far as keeping me home as a mom and available to him, you know, home became the center, home and church. And I don't think we had a problem I mean, you could ask my kids. Would they say we were always at church? I don't know if they would say that, because I was home with my kids. And then when they got older, we started a Christian school at our church, of which I was the principal.
Yeah.
So I was still there and home. Along the way, ministry-wise, I did some, I started a women's Bible study with 1 woman, 2 women the first year. That was
Yeah.
once a week.
Yeah.
And then on Sundays, I played the piano. So in the beginning, we didn't have a whole lot going on. So
Right. But even in the midst of all that, with mothering and everything, there was a partnership happening.
yeah,
Where
Yeah.
it wasn't just like, oh, now just because I have kids, or oh, now just because these emotional things that I need to deal with are coming up, I have to separate myself from you.
no, I was always involved in the church, starting out small, and basically in I taught the Bible, and I did choir. And then it
Yeah.
became worship team. So I did music and I did Bible. That's what I did. And then it grew and expanded, big Christmas musicals and Easter choirs,
Yeah.
but seasonally.
So we always did Mondays. We even bought vacation homes with inheritances in the Poconos, and took our kids Sunday right after church to Monday night, if not Tuesday morning. And with homeschooling, we didn't have to always be obviously back.
Mhm.
So I would just take Monday.
Yeah.
The
So
other
you prioritize.
I still
Yeah.
to
Really?
this day
prioritize.
want to
know
do
that.
stupid stuff. I want to split logs. I want to golf. I want to cut the lawn. And honestly, I have to hold her, sometimes, because, and I want to say it this way. We hold our conversations. I try to say it's Monday, and it's kind of, crass, but I just go, hold on that. I know we're getting a good thought, but it's Monday. Let's just hold on it. But I have to say that Priscilla, another difference I thought was awesome that she has been, is I tell her stuff. I don't not tell her the problems and the people.
Mm.
Sometimes she'll tap out and say too much. I don't want to hear all that.
Mm.
But she's been the friend and the counselor.
Mhm.
Because when we were in that church in Edison, we had nobody.
Yeah.
And we had, our denomination was stuffy and not even born again. So we were it's like dropped into Iran tonight. What would you do? So we did it together. And I think that brought a bonding that I think colleagues don't have. Where
Best
they
friends.
Say, best friends.
Yeah.
We've always been best friends.
Yeah.
I think that's huge, because I've heard a lot of husbands say, I can't share with my wife because I have to protect her from. But you were like, she's my best friend. She's my partner. I'm going to share, and she can tell me when
Yeah.
it's
Mm.
too much. Like,
And
That's true.
Can I tell you this one? Here's one that you might want to edit out. Okay, so before I got fat and ugly and old, things happen, and I had things happen that I just think the enemy brings in.
Mhm.
So I got to be careful how I say it. So I had, people would do stuff. I'd be in my office and a woman started to pull her shirt up, and I just stood up, went upstairs, and said to my wife, "This just happened." I told my assistant, and I said, "You need to ask her to leave," and that ended that counseling. So I learned the
Not
Billy,
to
the
counsel
Billy
women
Graham
alone.
room, the Billy Graham rule of not counseling women. So the other thing, I actually had a leader's wife kind of block the door from me and stare at and look at me, and I thought, so that I ended up not shielding her from that. She became
Interesting.
the person I said, and then Mike, my elder Mike, him, and then as my oldest son got older,
Yeah.
my oldest son, actually, I was counseling with my door open, a couple. As the couple left, young couple, she was pretty and all that stuff, but she had a Victoria's Secret sticker, whatever, the pink thing on. He said, don't ever talk to her again.
Mm.
He had a word of knowledge. And I'm like, what? You don't talk like that. How do you, what do you? So, you kind of, she also became, I didn't want to not tell her if I was tempted, or if somebody was kind of coming on, or someone bothered me, or I'm bothered. You know what I mean? It was all those things. Something was said that was odd. Somebody touched me. Somebody was too flirty. I think that was to me, I would say this to men's groups, and they would be like, my wife could never take that. I don't agree. And I had guys even challenging me. I could never talk like that to my wife. I'd say, no, I tell my wife, years ago with the temptations of what's on print or what's on the internet. I would tell her that stuff. I'd say, look, you need to pray over me. Or I'd say to her, I want you to guard me from this woman. I know you might like her, but there's something there. I'm not accusing her. I'm just telling you what I feel. I'm feeling something. So can you help me with that? And so before we had ushers, she would be sticking next to me.
Wow.
And I'd say, okay, we're going to do altar ministry together. And I can't have you doing, like other things. And if we want to not fall, I want to tell you. So then I came up with rules too and they were always challenged and offended. People were like, what do you mean, you're not going to counsel? I said, well, my wife is here. There's so many women that could counsel you.
Yeah.
I don't think
Very
you need my
wise.
wise wisdom. And so, I've looked at cases of how people fell. So it's there's termites that get in the trough of the marriage that you got to just weed out. And
yeah. And I mean, the Bible even speaks about bringing things into the light, and the fact that you didn't even give the enemy the opportunity to plant things in the dark and cultivate them in the dark. You were keeping it open and in the light with your That's powerful. That's really powerful.
Got to be honest.
Yeah.
And if, or if he felt like he needed to challenge me about something, or I would need to challenge him, I think it hit me around 20 years. I have this thought. I think around 20
marriage,
years,
you mean?
20 years of marriage, I thought, wow, 20 years, this is working. This is working. But I never looked, before that, I never analyzed or said, oh, we've been married 5 years and everything's going great, 10 years old, everything. Around 20 years, I thought, wow, there's people that haven't made it 20 years. And we've made it 20. And I began to realize, okay, what we're doing is working to go the long haul. I mean, for me, it was married for life. And he married me married for life. But I had the experience from my home to know what it was like to have parents my whole life together. But he didn't have that. And God had to work us through that, and I had to not have expectations that, well, you should understand this. Well, no, he didn't have that, so maybe he didn't understand it, so I need to explain it. And he would have to explain to me, you had this, but I didn't have that. And so we need to talk about it,
Communication.
She's been such a challenge and a help and all that. Maybe from our first church, we kind of fell into a traditional, and it's worked for us, traditional kind of style. I was the head, but she was the neck. And the jokes about, anyway, but everyone knows
The
those
neck
things.
turns the
Yeah,
head.
the neck turns.
It
And
supports the head.
We've just,
Sports and turns, yeah.
she never dug in and said, I'm not going to Chicago. No, I'm not going to Boston. No, I'm not going to New Jersey. And I deal with guys in my church where they don't want to leave our church, but they go, you're the best pastor. And I go, what do you mean I'm the best pastor? Yeah, you're the best when I'm leaving. And I go, look, you don't want to leave, do you? And the guy cries. So I've never had that kind of, we've tried to make decisions together. We try to come to, you know what I mean? She sees me as the leader, but it's not like, well, I'm the leader. You know what I mean? Where there's same thing in the church. The same thing hit me. We tried all the committees. We tried democracy. We tried, the elders and deacons being equal to me. It wasn't working.
When we got married, my mother died 2 months after we got married. So I thought, who am I going to? I don't know how to be a wife. How do you be a wife? I had nobody to talk to, and then I became a pastor's wife, and I just got my hands on every book I could get. I read all the books then on marriage and family and wives and husbands, and I don't even remember all the authoresses back then, but I just read everything I could read to find out. I'd read about pastors' wives who wrote books. I read all that stuff. And I pretty early on, I learned that I wasn't the head. I wasn't the head of the marriage. And I learned it, Ephesians, husbands, you're the head, love your wife, wives submit, and submit is like a 4-letter word to some women. But I learned that I was not the head. I am strong. I am opinionated. We both talk a lot all the time. and we're the same. He's a type A, I'm a type A leaders, and yet God taught me early on that I was not the head, and I chose to submit, and that submitting is a choice that you make cheerfully.
Right.
It's a cheerful choice, and every time, Jesus did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped. Philippians 2, but he made himself lower. He chose to submit, and that verse was like crucial to me as a young wife and a young pastor's wife, that this I'm going to be like Jesus. He's equal to God, no less than God, but he chose to come down to fulfill God's plan. And so now in our marriage and in our church, God's got a plan. And every time I choose to submit, I get blessed and I get promoted. Not that I was looking for that. I wasn't looking to be promoted, but God promotes us when we choose to get in line with what his plan is. And I have found, God speaks to me. Sometimes I come to him and I say, I feel like the Holy Spirit's saying this. Sometimes he'll say, And I'll say, will you pray about it? Yeah, pray about it. He might come back and say, I think that's really right. Or he may come back and say, I don't know. I don't see it that way. Maybe as a young pastor's wife, I'd be like, God talks to me too. He doesn't just talk to you. But as time wore on, I said, Priscilla, chill out. Yes, God. And I will also sometimes say, God, if he tells me something, I'll say, God, if you want him to know this, you need to tell him.
too.
You literally say those words.
I say, you need to tell him. And
then
that's,
you know what? I usually get hit upside the head by God with something, not shortly thereafter.
I'll just tell you the short
So good.
The short version of Stephen is that I went away on a women's retreat.
Your
and
son,
God,
just
my
'cause people
son.
who don't know
Oh yeah,
Stephen.
fourth child. I have 3 kids. Boom, boom, boom. Close,
How
3
old
years
were-
apart.
How old were you?
I was 38. So I go away on a women's retreat, and the Lord speaks to me. I have another child for you. And I'm looking around like, how did you find me here, Lord? I don't need enough. I was not happy with that prophetic word. Okay, so I go home. I tell it to him. He goes, you come home from a retreat and tell your husband, God spoke to me.
Yeah.
And you think he's going to go, oh, honey, what did God tell you?
Right.
So I told him, and he goes, I don't know. I'm really happy with the 3 kids we have. I don't really feel the need to have another child. And I probably said, I don't either. But so I just kept praying about it, kept giving it to God, and it kept getting stronger. And that got me more upset because I was 38 and I didn't feel the need to have another child.
You'd also miscarried.
And I had one miscarriage. Yeah.
That's hard.
And so it kept growing. And can you remember me at the altar on my face, crying? And at the time, the assistant pastor, the 2 of you were looking at me like, whoa.
Oh, no.
And I'm crying my eyes out. So I finally said, God, if you want us to have another baby, you better tell him. Now, we weren't arguing about it, but I was dying inside because I didn't want another baby. Isn't that awful to say?
Nope. I understand.
I just...
That's
But
how
anyway, we went
were
to
too.
visit our relatives who had a little blonde, blue-eyed boy. We're playing with the nephew on the floor, and he looks at that boy, and God says to him, if you want one,
I have one for you,
I
just
have
like
a
him."
blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy for you, if you want. And he came to me and he said, okay, let's do it. And then, of course, it was only a matter of, it was very fast.
Right.
I got pregnant very
Right.
fast.
No, it was the
Isn't that
same
crazy?
for us.
Listen to her now. Tell
the
the
same
story
for us. We were
about Asher,
We were
our boy.
happy
Mm-hmm.
with our girls. We were happy.
This
they
is
were getting
crazy
older, more independent, like everything. We were our
You were finally
Life
getting
was
your freedom back.
easier.
happy family of
Yeah.
4. I was getting my identity back, feeling more like myself again, all this stuff. And the same thing, God was like, and he wasn't like, I have another child. He was like, I have a son for you.
Wow.
But just the same way, he didn't pose it as a command. It was like, here's a gift that I'm offering. You can choose to accept it. And it was the same thing. And I went to him and I was like, I think we're supposed to have another one. And he was like, okay.
You know,
Yeah.
And we
I've
got our
known
son.
men that have said no.
Yeah, I was like, sure.
And I would say, in all due respect, I tried to gently counsel some of my own guys. Your wife has a desire. would you really, really think about this and pray about this, brother?
Mm.
Why would you? Oh, we don't, money, whatever the reasons. I thought, and not quite on the same level, but Priscilla was the first to say to me when I hit 50, she said, I think you could get a Harley if you want. And I was like, so
25th wedding anniversary.
yeah. And I found one for $3,000 in Miami, and a guy in our church ran a trucking company, and he trucked it up, dropped off. I bought it sight unseen, a Sportster. And it happened again this last summer when Brian called me up and said, there's a motorcycle that's available. Get a second one, and Stephen could ride the first. But I found that we worked together like that, that she said that to me like one day, you could do. So I'm waiting for the Corvette. I think that would be. That's
What
coming.
anniversary is that?
Yeah.
Lord.
I don't know. We better hurry up.
No, but I love what you said about the submitting to your husband. I feel like it is a narrative that is so strong to women these days that if you submit, you lose your value, you lose your strength, you lose your identity, you're being controlled. And that is a lie from the devil. Submission does not equal a regress in yourself. It doesn't equal a loss.
Right. But see, here's the thing. As a submitted wife, I have to pray for him to be a godly head.
Right.
Just because God says the man is a head doesn't mean that the man is walking in headship.
Right.
So like young guys and girls get married, he's called to be the head, she's called to submit. They don't know how to do it.
Right.
All they know is who they are in the flesh. They don't know how to do this. So it's important that she has to pray for him, and I would pray for him to be the head, because he came out of a home where the dad, maybe, can I say this, was not the head. So that's his experience. Yeah. So wives, even while you're submitting, you have to pray, Lord, you got to pray him up to be the head.
Give him the wisdom, give him the direction, give him the strength.
And the husband needs to pray for his wife that she'll submit, not make her submit. See, that's not submission. If the husband strong arms and is going to strong arm, the Bible says you need to submit, you should be submitting. That's not submission. Submission is when you choose. So if a husband has a wife that's not submissive, he needs to pray for her to choose to submit, because then it's a God thing.
Because when it's forced, it's abuse.
It's not submission, right?
It's control.
It's right. And if he's not a godly head, then he's a controlling head. Right. And he's not supposed to be that either. He's supposed to be a godly head.
And when there is that relationship of a godly head and a chosen submission from the wife, that's what we have.
Yep.
There is so much respect.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I feel like women think they're not. I can tell how much he respects me.
Sure.
Even though I will submit to what he's feeling, or we'll talk through things and all that stuff. I want him to be my covering.
Sure.
But there's so much respect and humility in his leadership. And I think that's what you're saying. When a man knows how to be a godly head, there's humility in that too. Yep. And he shows respect to his wife.
Yep.
Just as she respects him.
I mean, I've done this humor thing all the time about that I'm glad to have my first wife in the front row, or that Priscilla is, enjoying marital bliss, 35 years or whatever. And yet a couple weeks ago, the Lord told me on joy that I should end the sermon about how the only way I could figure out that we get joy, as the angel said, was I realized the same joy I felt the night I was engaging Priscilla. And she cried when I said it. Women were like, ooh, that's beautiful. So,
you likened it to, we have Jesus for the rest of our lives. That's what gives us joy. And then you said, and you engaged me and said, now the way I can make that analogy is, I have Priscilla for the rest of my life.
Right. Versus my father, who left when I was 4. And you feel like the best thing I could think about the joy of the Lord without the angels explaining it was, I thought, we get to have Jesus the rest of our lives. So that's been, eternity. I think Jesus, going back to the first comment, was that's how we navigated all the junk with the cult and all the Christian cult, the first church, was you don't give up Jesus. Right. You still don't. No matter what tragedies happen, does that cease? Jesus ceases to exist. And we've done funerals for babies, for twins. It hasn't been, I hate funerals. I mean, I wish I've done so many more of them. I've done 100 weddings and hundreds of funerals, and I'll never say no to one. But, how do people rebound from bad stuff, from breakups, from divorces? Jesus is there.
Mm-hmm.
He literally loves you.
And will never leave or forsake.
Right.
And she's proven that she won't.
Mm.
And I found in a human person that kind of ability.
Wow.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. So, if you had any thoughts,
Wow.
Murder is the only option.
yeah,
What we've learned today on the altar.
I feel like I just ate a full meal
I know,
talking
it's
to
true.
you guys. I'm like, whoa.
And
That
there's
was so good.
for time's sake, we got to wrap this one up. But there's so more. We want you guys to come back because
sure.
I want to hear about family versus ministry and time and how did you balance that and not
More on the Mondays and the quality time.
all of those. There's so much more. So we love you guys. We honor you.
We love you too.
And
Love you too.
it's Life Church New Jersey is the church that. So for 40 years, it's
it.
changed names and locations, but that's where you guys have sown. And there's just so much fruit in people's lives. We talk about it all the time about how Life Church
Loves God and loves
God
people.
and loves people,
Mhm.
and there's just an evangelism anointing, and people get saved. I think of Enrique and Christina and just gang members, new age people getting saved just without tricks and gimmicks.
Right.
And it's just
Yeah.
here's the gospel.
Yeah.
Present the gospel and then love on the people and disciple them. And you
Mhm.
guys do that so well. So
Praise
you
God.
can find them. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram, Life Church NJ, and they also live stream their services on
Mhm.
Sunday.
yes.
So
Awesome.
We love you guys.
Thank you guys
are
for doing this.
awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for
And we'll
having
definitely
us.
have you back because we
Sure.
didn't even get to